I have drastically underestimated the importance of context in my decisions recently. If you are trying to move toward any goals of yours as well, perhaps you might be underestimating context as well. And so that's the reason I'm making this video. Hopefully you don't waste as much of your time making bad decisions without thinking about your context first. To explain this, first I need to define context. And so I was really trying to write down and synthesize exactly what does that mean. Context is a set of conditions which influences how you receive or interpret a piece of information. Let's say that somebody tells me to work on product in my company. That is a great piece of advice when my biggest problem is customer retention. So my customers are leaving because my product sucks. Work on product is therefore a great piece of advice. Let's take that same piece of advice and apply a different context. Work on product, except my company has no customers. In this situation, work on product is maybe not the best piece of advice because I need to attract customers to then improve the product and see if there's more retention or not. That's my kind of working definition here at the moment, is that context is simply a set of conditions, or perhaps better said, a set of constraints, which shapes how you receive a piece of information. And I have ignored that, honestly, for far too long. When you take that definition, when you receive any new information, the first thing that you should ask is, what is my context? So essentially, the first thing you should ask is, what is relevant to me and what is not relevant to me? That is something that takes proactive reflection, and I realize it's very easy not to do that these days, right? There's so much advice being spewed out on the internet. You can take a lot of it at face value. To put it very bluntly, the major mistakes that I was making, and that I have been making the past few months, is that I was really caught up in trying to do, honestly, what probably seemed cooler. The largest recent example that I have of this is me going to San Francisco without a kind of clear business idea or trajectory. I'm not going to say that I regret the trip. I learned a lot, but in terms of what actually moves me closer to my goals, since I left the video editing idea that I was working on a couple months back and I didn't have a clear direction, going to San Francisco wasn't, something that was going to necessarily improve my outcomes. It was great to be exposed to the environment and to learn and to meet people and just have more conversations, but it wasn't a highly leveraged activity to get somewhere where I wanted. To be fair, I think the main issue is that I've been having trouble defining exactly, which direction I want to go. But I think some of the most successful business people really took off by focusing on what they were good at and what they have access to around them, right? And so it's like, start with where you are rather than with the end goal, and you just go and chase that blindly, because there's so many other people doing that. One of my favorite quotes is, winners and losers both have the same finish line. And I love this idea, and it's really true, right? Which is that everybody has the same finish line at the end of the race. They're all looking there. The difference between winners and losers is not the goals. And so just because you have big goals doesn't mean that you're going to win. Ultimately, what differentiates winners is a host of different qualities, and I'm not going to dive into every single one of those, but I think one of those is resourcefulness. Resourcefulness, I would say, is your ability to make the most out of your current context. So given your constraints, a resourceful person is able to get as much as possible out of those particular constraints as they can toward a particular goal that they have. To bring this kind of like back down to, today, tomorrow, and whatever you're working on now, one of my major mistakes was basically not thinking more about what unfair advantages do I have that other people don't have, and what is my context that I can leverage. What set of pre-existing conditions do I have that other people don't have, which may influence the way that, I try a new business idea or something like that, right? I came to this reflection because I think I have wasted a lot of time chasing stuff that was very hyped up, rather than just really sitting down and thinking, okay, who do I have around me that I can help as much as possible? And instead, going into like immediately cold outreaching to random people, like this was basically my business strategy for my development agency. And by the way, all of the money I made was always through connections. It was never through some like crazy outbound strategy, which does work when you get specific, but like I didn't really know what I was doing. And I made my money out of my context, actually, but I didn't double down on it, and I didn't, learn how to leverage it better. And so I'm really trying to think more about that now. And I don't have all the answers just yet, but I do know that I wasn't thinking about this enough. And when you're watching a video, when you're watching some podcast, when you're listening to something, when you're reading a book, don't just go after whatever the numbers say or whatever everybody else says is hot. One of the examples of this is sometimes when I was searching for ideas in the past few months for kind of the next business that I want to do, I was quite literally just looking for large industries or large opportunities, which doesn't make sense because it doesn't take into account my context. And so the most important thing is actually, what large industries do you have access to? What industries can you move in the fastest? The best example that I have of this is when I was working on the social media video tool, Audicer. I hit people up and I booked 20 calls in a day. And that was like the perfect example of me using my context to the absolute best of my ability. I don't regret leaving or anything. I'm sound on that choice, and that's not what I'm kind of going back to here. But that was a great example of me really leveraging context. And recently, after that, I think I didn't do that as much. And I was listening to noise, I was listening to hype, and basically looking to outside influences for direction. Well, that doesn't usually end well. So maybe this is a useful reflection for you, maybe not. It was for me, it has been for me, and I'm trying to double down on it, I'm trying to write more as well. Yeah. Have a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your evening, wherever you are. Feel free to comment any questions below. And I hope you enjoyed this video.